think for me, probably the one that epitomises the direction I've been pursuing now for several decades is the riptide drawers. Because one of the things that's interested me a lot from working here and being very much aware of living in an island and looking at the world from this beautiful spot is the fact that we're surrounded by water, and looking at the movement of water is something which is directly or indirectly informed the way that the sorts of forms that I've been wanting to achieve has evolved, and especially when working with laminations and so on, then obviously curves and undulations are what can be achieved through that process and expressed through that process. So that piece probably, there was experimentation in trying to incorporate the handle of the drawer in such a way that it wasn't an add-on thing, that it really was the centre of the whole piece, because that's the part you actually grab hold of and touch and physically engage with the work, and so I wanted that to be really the most important element of the whole piece, and everything developed from that, and yet overall still quite a simple piece, not sort of overindulgent in experimentation. So I wanted it to retain some sense of elegance and simplicity, that it could sit in a room amongst other pieces without shouting too much for attention, and yet when you engage with it, there's some sort of feedback of what the form is doing and how it works functionally as well as visually. I was interested in sort of DIY flat pack putting together, so that the user actually has an involvement in creating the piece. So that sort of interest was still there in the back of my mind. And then thinking about Tasmania's situation, where really the market is essentially elsewhere. Even the local market is made up of a lot of visitors that are here rather than local people. And so thinking about how to move materials around, and particularly the vessel bowl, I intended initially for that to be a flat pack kit with simple instructions on how to put together. In the end, I haven't actually sold it in that format, because bending it and weaving the fingers of the bowl to create the vessel form is a little bit more difficult than you might first imagine. It's not so much difficult, but it's a delicate process, because it's quite fragile until it's finally together, and then it becomes quite a strong thing. And so I ended up actually not selling them as a flat pack form, but that's what the idea was started off from. Yes, I was fortunate enough to have a couple of residencies through the Australia Council studio system, one in '92 in Barcelona and one in 2000 in LA. And the Barcelona one actually became quite a turning point for my work in a way that I didn't expect, which is really the whole point of engaging on these residencies. You're exposed to yourself to a different culture and see where it takes you. We were living in the studio, which was fairly sparsely kitted out with furniture, and we weren't allowed to pin anything to the walls or do anything like that. And it got me thinking about people living in flats with those same kind of restrictions, and furniture that could lean against walls, where the architecture provides half the supporting structure. And the picador coat rack really came out of that, and a series of pieces where the wall is used to support the work in a way that you don't actually have to screw things to the wall necessarily. And also looking at the culture and trying to reflect something about the culture, and the whole bullfighting thing, of course, which I don't identify with. I never went to a bullfight. But nevertheless, you couldn't ignore that it was part of the culture, and in a very macho, theatrical way. I mean, they call it a sport, but it's really theatre. And so I wanted to make some comment about that. And the coat rack is essentially, it's like the dead carcass of a bull, really. It's the aftermath of all of that violent theatre, but hopefully captured in a way which retains some sort of dignity as well as practicality.